All right. Hello, I am Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co host James Chester and our executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to invite you to another exciting edition of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we are joined by Dr. Daniel Chong, a naturopathic physician who's been revolutionizing cardiovascular health since 2000. While most doctors wait for heart attacks to happen, Dr. Chong has dedicated his career to preventing them entirely. With advanced training in clinical lipidology from the European Atherosclerosis Society, that's a mouthful, and advanced training in cardiometabolic medicine, he's not your typical doctor. Dr. Chong calls himself a nutrition and lifestyle-oriented lipidologist. I can't wait to unpack that. And a cardiovascular health facilitator specializing in preventative cardiology. Can't wait. After serving 4 years as clinical consultant for Boston Heart Diagnostics, he's here to share the real secrets of bulletproofing your heart. Dr. Chong, welcome to Get Better Faster. Excited to have you here.
Hey, Jason, nice to see you. Thanks. Nice to see you, James. Thanks for having me.
Hey, yeah, this is going to be one of those episodes where I get to learn as much as our audience gets to learn, and it gives me a chance to highlight some of my curiosity because I think that your language will speak directly to the needs of people, and my curiosity is going to actually help me get better faster. So,
Cool.
you grew up in Hawaii, right?
I did.
And
Lucky me.
yeah, let's talk about your origin story a little bit. Like,
Sure.
how did you get to the point where you were thinking, hey, I'm going to go be a doctor and help people with their hearts?
Yeah, my dad was a neurosurgeon, and I was the youngest of three kids, and I was the kid who kind of just wanted to do everything like my dad did. So I always wanted to be a doctor since I can remember. Anytime my friends would get hurt, I would go in there and try to check out what was going on with them or whatever. And so I kind of just always had in my head that I was going to be a doctor. And yet, kind of at the same time, my dad, despite being sort of a super high tech, high level type of doctor, was also very, very keen on healthy living, eating well, exercising, and he really imparted that into sort of my being as well. So I kind of had this like parallel interest in more health related stuff at the same time. And when I got to college, I just started learning a little bit more about different things out there beyond just what in the MD world. And kind of instantly, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this straightforward surgeon approach or something like that. So I just started exploring. This is back in the late 90s, and no internet yet, so I started sending away for like pamphlets and things like that. I had no idea what naturopathic medicine was, had no idea what chiropractic was. James, I know you have some chiropractic background. You'll find it funny. I remember sending away for info from the chiropractic school up in Portland near where I was in college. And they sent a video that sort of like covered what chiropractic medicine was. And I was like, man, this sounds so cool. And at the very end, they did a cervical adjustment. And as soon as I saw that, basically the only thing I ever saw that looked like that was like Arnold Schwarzenegger killing somebody on a movie. And I was like, whoa, okay, not doing that. And then soon after that, I found out about naturopathic medicine. And as soon as I read about it and sort of the philosophy underlying it, it was like, okay, that's exactly what type of doctor I want to be. So that's kind of how I got there.
I just think that that's a really great opener, and it sets a foundation for people to know your curiosity, but also as you went through getting the pamphlets and watching the Western States video,
yes,
you realized that there was probably some stagnation in how people were taking care of their health, specifically from a cardiovascular perspective, because I know that that's your specialty.
Yeah.
When did you realize that the conventional approach wasn't working? And when did you realize that you really had something to help people get better faster?
Well, I mean, as soon as you get to naturopathic school, I'm sure it's similar in chiropractic school. It's like you get your eyes opened to a whole new world and a whole new way of exploring health, and sort of the decreased emphasis on the idea of like find the disease, treat the disease with this, whatever suppressive medication that you have or whatever. And so it wasn't really a realization so much about the shortcomings of the conventional world, which again, growing up with a dad who, was taking brain tumors out of people's heads and saving their lives, et cetera. I had still a significant, appreciation for that world. So it was more for me learning a whole new way of approaching health from this preventive aspect, and what you can do by supporting your lifestyle and your diet and things like that, and how much you can do to prevent things. That really sort of opened my eyes and got me so much more interested in that approach.
I want to jump in on that too, and just you and I before the show started had talked about. I threw some statistics at you very quickly, but I'm fascinated about cardiovascular prevention. But I think a lot of our audience knows this. I'm pretty vocal and open about it. I've been posting a lot about it lately because I'm coming up on my brother's. Well, I just passed my brother's anniversary of his death.
Yeah,
And last year, both my father, 91, and sort of expected, and my brother, not expected, a couple months later, died of sudden cardiac arrest. Like they just died. They stood up, or they just died. And it hit me really hard. And, of course, I don't want to be a statistic. And we always say that, we can either be warnings or examples, right? And I don't want to be a warning. I want to be example. I want to outlive my genes. I mean, all of that stuff. I want to chat about that. But ultimately, with specifically what we're talking about, preventing death is what we're talking about. Preventative cardiology, right? We're talking about death. The number one killer worldwide is cardiovascular disease. The number one killer. The number one killer in the United States is cardiovascular disease. It's going to take out, according to the American Heart Association, over 1 million Americans this year, 2025. Over 1 million of us are going to die. The same group, the American Heart Association, in their journal called Circulation, and then even on their website, when you dive into it, they flat out, transparently, black and white say 80 to 90% of these deaths could be prevented. That's 800,000 to 900,000 people, Americans alone, could have more time with their kids, their families, their spouses, their work. I mean, be productive. I mean, contribute to society, change the world. I mean, we're losing 800,000 or 900,000 people a year, every single year. And why aren't we preventing it? Dr. Chong, you got it. Like, I got to know, like, what the heck is going on?
That's a really good question. I mean, I would argue, unfortunately, it's a super complex answer. There's not some single reason here or there. To me, it's a combination of the general sort of lack of inertia in the public in terms of interest in health, the sort of world we live in being set up to really, in every way that you turn, every direction you turn, being set up in a way that literally discourages the type of health that we need to get working on preventing cardiovascular disease, whether it's because we're getting more sedentary, we have more and more access to processed foods that aren't helping our health, that whole world. And then we have a medical system that for various reasons is not, centered on preventive medicine, outside of the realm of like, make sure you take this drug to prevent this or that disease from happening, or this or that disaster. So it's a hugely complex mix of reasons. And what I always tell people more than anything is essentially modern life is living in a way that's, in every way that you could look at it, completely disconnected from the way that humans evolved to live, and what we're evolved to thrive via. So I guess that's why it's such a hard thing to tackle, because it's so complicated and there's so many different contributing factors, and every angle you look at. So it takes somebody to be super proactive in and of themselves, by themselves, to go seek out answers and seek out different approaches and things that are going to work for them. They need practitioners that understand this stuff and are going to work with them on that level. So it's a major challenge, unfortunately.
Go ahead, James.
Well, I'm going to pass this back to Jason here in a hot second, but we're painting with very broad strokes here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's good to open up that way. But I think Smokey the Bear said it the best. Only you can prevent a forest fire. And
Yeah.
I think that if we really looked at our health the same way we looked at forestry, forest fires don't happen where people go in and do mitigation and they clean up the dead fallen down stuff. And I think you could look at that as a simile for the way that people are dealing with their health is if they went through and they actually mitigated some of the debris and some of the tinder fire inside of us, they might not have this. And it could be a huge calling for preventative maintenance inside of our biome, our bodies. And only you can prevent a heart attack. Only you can prevent a stroke. Only you can prevent hypertension and diabetes and cancers. And I think that if people knew that the preventative game was a lot stronger than the reactive game, we wouldn't be in a sick care model. We'd be in a thriving, the arteries would be thriving, the vascular systems would be thriving, the hearts would be thriving rather than this reactionary thing. And in mining, there used to have the canary in the coal mine. You guys ever heard of that?
Sure.
Like they put a canary in the coal mine, and if the canary died, it wasn't fit for the miners. And Dr. Jason shared a staggering statistic there of 1 million will die this year. That's way more than the canary in the coal mine. And if we knew that the million was the canary, how do we make it a safer condition for people to just exist? And how do we make it a safer condition for people to thrive? And I know that's a lot, but I shared some similes between forest fires and the sick care system and keeping people without needing that crisis type care, and this crisis moment where 1 million people potentially will die this year from something that could be prevented. And Jason shared stories about his family members, his pops and his brother. Like, these are serious things that hit us close to home. And there's not one person with 1 million people that are going to fall down and die this year that it doesn't touch their household.
I want to jump in real fast too. I'm going to comment and then I'm going to redirect it. I just want to talk about preventative. Dr. Chong nailed it. Daniel, you nailed it with saying that it's a complex answer. Why aren't we preventing this stuff? Right. But I'm going to give you guys a real straightforward answer. I quit working with insurance companies a long time ago, because for our listeners that don't really know this, they don't give a shit about your health. I'm going to say it one more time. Your insurance company doesn't give a shit about your health. All they want is your money, and they don't want to pay anything out. They don't want to pay your doctors. They don't want to pay for anything. And I just want to start there. That insurance is a for-profit business. I want to start with that. We have government insurances as well, like Medicare, federal insurances. And the rule in insurance, back when I used to consult with them, I used to do a lot of work with, some famous type of insurance companies that have a color blue associated with them. I've done a lot of consulting work with them in the past. And what I learned is, as goes Medicare, so goes everything, right? So Medicare kind of sets the rule, and then all the other private insurers kind of follow suit. According to Medicare guidelines, section 2251.3. I want you guys to write it down. If you guys are listening, James, my brilliant partner, brother, friend, always says, get out a pen and paper while we're having this conversation, because stuff's going to come up that you're going to want to refer to. So just write it down. This is Medicare guidelines section 2251.3. I'm going to quote it. I want you guys to listen to what our federal government says. A treatment plan that seeks to prevent disease, promote health, and prolong and enhance a quality of life, or a therapy that's performed to maintain or prevent deterioration of a chronic condition, is not deemed medically necessary. So they're saying flat fucking out that, I'm sorry, I get pissed about this stuff. Our federal government, MAHA and all, is saying we're not going to pay for preventative care. So if they're not going to pay for it, I talked to a doctor one time, a cardiac surgeon, right? And she's like, I could sit down And I could sit down and explain to someone how to eat, how to change their lifestyle, how to do all this stuff. And it pays blah, blah, blah. Or in 15 minutes, I can go in and put a stent in and get paid thousands of dollars. She's like, why? There's no incentive for doctors for preventative care. No one's paying for it except for out of pocket. Dr. Chong, you have to walk me through what can we do with this incredible obstacle in front of us, the federal government saying no one needs to pay for preventative care. Just keep paying for radical surgeries and drugs. It seems inverted to me. I'm done.
It is inverted. I mean, and the people who get the brunt of the problem are the people who can't afford
Right.
to just go out and do things themselves beyond very simple. I mean, I don't want to detract from the powerful effects of very simple things, very simple changes that people can make in their lives if they're aware of what they can do, and what they should do. But nonetheless, a lot of times, especially when somebody's in a very serious health situation, they need help, they need a practitioner, etc. And like you, Jason, I left the insurance industry, as a provider, I don't know, close to 20 years ago. And the hardest part about that was knowing that doing that was going to mean that certain people couldn't access me unless I gave my services away basically for free, which I sometimes do, but it's hard to make an actual living if you do that too often. So, so that's the biggest problem for me is in trying to solve that problem, is that right now the only alternative is, as you said, going outside of the system, learning on your own, etc. And so many people literally don't have either physical access because there's no doctors near them that do this, or the financial means to be able to explore that. So I wish I had answers. I don't have answers,
I don't
unfortunately.
either. I was hoping that you did.
It's a mess
James?
out there. It's a mess, and it doesn't appear to be getting going in the right direction as we speak.
Well, I want to just give some clarity to people out there that are looking and watching and listening and like actually like taking in the information that Dr. Jason and I produce. Is if you think about becoming rich and wealthy, you make deposits into your savings account, into your bank account. And people really have to get clear with making deposits into their health account daily. And it's not to the doctors that people might not have access to. I was always told the number one doctor in the world is the one inside of you. And that is self-responsibility. And if you don't manage your money right and pay your bills, guess what? You go bankrupt. And if you don't manage your health and make daily deposits into your health account, guess what? You die.
And in our schooling, at least for me, a product of our wonderful public school education system, I learned nothing about health or money. Those are the two things they don't teach at all. It's like the two most important things for us to even, God forbid, survive, but to thrive. I mean, I hate to be it. I mean, I know people say you can't buy happiness, money doesn't buy happiness. I have a good friend of mine, Alex Sharfin. If you guys aren't following him, you should be as well. He said people that say that have not given enough away. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, there's a huge difference between being in poverty and having an excess. And unfortunately, we're not taught that. And we're also not taught to have an excess in our health. And so we're poverty stricken in both ways, at least with our education, and we're hamstringed. I want to go back just a little bit too, coming back to this whole idea of preventive medicine. I think we all agree that it needs to be there. We don't have our feds behind us. Maybe Maha will move it along. I don't know. I had hopes. I have hopes. They waffle day to day. But I do want to bring it back to that. My dad died of sudden cardiac death, like flat out, in his 90s. And then a few months later, my brother, a few years older than me, died of the same thing. And, my dad was, I'm just going to say, a type 2 diabetic. He was at times, mildly obese or very overweight. I think even in his leanest times, he was probably like 20, 30 pounds over. My brother made my dad look small. It's like my brother was trying to eat. I mean, my brother ate and drank all of his feelings. I mean, he was visiting vascular surgeons, losing parts of his body as this stuff happens when you get to these areas. And, I talked to my brother And he would say things like, well, it's in our genes. And I'm like, hypertension, high cholesterol, cardiovascular, diabetes, all this stuff. And I refuse to accept that about myself. I just refuse to accept it. Dr. Chong, as you know, veteran preventative cardiology and lipidology, advocate, what would you say to people that say, hey, it's familial, it's in my family, it's in my genes, it's going to happen to me? Tell me about your perspective on that, because I'm sure you hear it in cardiology all the time.
Yeah, and as per usual, it's another complex topic with a lot of nuance to it. First and foremost, I would say I oftentimes tell people genetics present possibilities, but they don't necessarily define outcomes.
I like that.
And there's plenty of evidence out there that people can have strong predispositions to things that lead them all the way to the point that they have severe cardiovascular disease already. And if they are lucky enough to find the information or whatever that they need to radically change what they're doing in their lives from as many angles as possible, the entire trajectory that they're on can completely almost 180. And I mean, you see that in my work. I'm doing, before and after objective imaging studies on people's arteries, seeing plaque shrink, things like that, to really try to get a full breadth of evidence that the changes that they're making are actually having the impact that we want them to have. So it's entirely possible to fight against, so to speak, your genetic predispositions. That said, I do absolutely also have great respect for the impact that genetic predispositions can have on people, especially certain types. So it gets quite complicated in that regard, because sometimes you're going to have certain genetic predispositions that really are, not having as big of an impact, and then the lifestyle factors just massively multiply the effects of that. Whereas in other situations, I mean, I've seen people doing pretty much everything that I could hope that they would be doing in their lives health-wise, still getting somewhat worse because of the power of the impact of the genetic predispositions that they have in their body. So certainly if they were living unhealthy lives, it would have been much worse for them. But I've learned over time, it's why I place so much emphasis on doing my best to reevaluate people and find how well their bodies are responding. Because what I don't any what I no longer do is make assumptions about people. So if somebody's like, oh yeah, I fully changed my lifestyle, my diet, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm still going to want to recheck, because I've seen enough examples of where I was surprised by things getting worse when so many other people doing similar things got better, that I've learned a lot more hefty respect for the genetic side of things as well. So as with everything else in the way I practice, it's all very sort of combined and complex and depends on the individual person, what's going on with them, et cetera. And I kind of just try to remain aware of all aspects and contributors to what direction people are headed in their health, and do my best to, address everything as well as possible.
I think that that's a really solid answer, because that's a follow-up to something I'm really curious about. And I'm just going to make some general statements, common things that make us all the same. We all have genes. We all come from an XY chromosome. Like, we all become a person, and we all have familial backgrounds. We all have thoughts. We all become a human. Time keeps us all the same. We all get 24 hours in a day, whether you believe it or not. Gravity is always on. And those are like physical realm that we live in. And then we all put our shoes and socks on one at a time. I've never met anybody who can put two shoes and two socks on at the same time. You might be able to put your pants on two legs at the same time, but you're only going to put one shoe and one sock on, like one by one. So we have these common, but we have these common things, right? And we all are born in this world with nothing, and we all leave this world with nothing, except for the memories that we make in between. That's our time, and that's our health also. You make better memories when you have better health, I believe. And but like Jason said, the education model, it doesn't predispose us to health and financial freedom. And there's no money in healthy people. Like there is money in broken people, and there is money in bankrupt people, because there's systems that support those. It's very parasitic. Um, and there are systems out there that exist that will take advantage of people that have poor health, that fall into that trap of the Maha movement, into the Medicare guidelines. Like there are systems out there that parasitically exist that take that as their gain. They take people's loss for gain. But testing, you said that you do specific different testing that helps people maybe have preventative outcomes. So if we're going to take somebody that has the same time, the same gravity, and their genetic code that they're predisposed to, how does your testing that's non-conventional, doing the lipid style testing, help people know that they're maybe going to get better quality years of their life going forward?
That's a great question.
Well, I always tell people that the most important test is the second one. And what I mean by that is that's where we start finding how their body's responding to whatever it is that they're doing, whatever changes they're making, whatever things they're taking or not taking, or choosing to take or choosing not to take, etc. The most important thing to identify is how their body's responding. So
Yes.
I'm pretty straightforward. I do a combination of lab testing and imaging studies with people.
I
And
love that.
the lab testing that I use is fairly straightforward. I used to do a heck of a lot more lab tests than I use now. Just I've refined it down for various reasons, mostly because a lot of stuff is either overlapping or not very well standardized in terms of being able to be trustworthy from test to test. But it's still nonetheless a decent amount more than what's typically tested lab wise in the conventional setting, primary care setting, even cardiology setting. So the labs give us, insight into like the processes and how they're changing in the person's body, and give us suggestions of likely directions that a person may be going, good or bad. And then the imaging is really where you could say like the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And it's going to help identify like, okay, whatever we're guessing may be happening from the lab tests, what's actually playing out in reality in the arteries.
I'm going to pass this over to Dr. Jason here in a hot second, but I do a lot of community outreach. I've done 800 chiropractic marketing events where I've scheduled in 11,000 people, all for chiropractic care. And one of the things that I find is a common thread, and this is going to probably be an eye opener for you too, is people come to me and they say, I've heard if I go to the chiropractor once, I have to go for the rest of my life. And I said, well, how frequently do you go to the dentist? And, we've done a really good job of indoctrinating people with the dental mindset. And I tell people, you only brush your teeth you want to keep, right? And then I tell them it's actually a gift if you can go see somebody that cares about you and your nervous system and your family's health. That's going to be an advocate for you. That's actually a benefit. It's not a punishment. So having a doctor in your corner that's going to do the right thing for you from the time you meet them to the time you guys no longer are in doctor-patient relationship is amazing. So I guess my question, and this kind of goes to Dr. Jason also, for both you guys can maybe co-tag team this, is when you think about cardiovascular, and you said the testing, the initial one's great, but the follow-up testing is also great. How long would you want somebody to be under your care for?
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean like before I test them again, or just in general? How long?
Just in general, how long do you want to have a doctor-patient relationship with these people?
Yeah, I'm literally right now in the midst of completing a creation of an online program that I've tried my best to design in a sense that when people are done with it, they don't need me, which is not the best business model in the world. But
Right.
this isn't about making money. This is about, making healthy people. So, um, you know, it's nowadays it's still the situation where for the most part it's hard for people to get access to some of the follow-up tests that they might want to do periodically without reconnecting with their doctor. But beyond that, if everything is done right, and at least we know maybe after a year or two of observation that their body's clearly heading in a new and better direction, they should need my services less and less and less. Um, and perhaps not even at all. So, I agree with you though, James. Like it is an important thing for people to have the support of somebody like us that's going to help steer them in the right direction, be their cheerleader, be their person that helps them understand what's going on with them. But at the same time, I'm a strong believer that the human body is designed for health. And if you do everything that's necessary to support what it's able to do, it should go that direction, even if things are starting off in a really bad place. So technically, they shouldn't really need a doctor for beyond a certain period of time. So that's kind of my general view on it. I don't know how Jason you feel about it, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Oh man, I think it's just such a great question. I appreciate it. I don't know if I've ever answered it on the show. Uh, it's
Yeah.
interesting, Daniel, because I heard you say what we've said. Our virtual practice is currently called Radiant Health. We switched it from Epic, which it was before, just because we transitioned team and just the lens that we're looking through and whatnot. But same general idea. When we had it named Epic, Epic was an acronym, empowering the person to impact the community. And our goal was always education oriented and training oriented. Rachel and I actually own a website called beyourowndoctor.com, BYOD, with the whole concept of like teaching people, like James was saying earlier. I mean, we are really, if it comes down to it, we're in charge of our own health. We're in charge of our own sovereignty. We have to be responsible for ourselves because quite frankly, no one else is going to do it. And even if they're willing to do it, nobody can do the push-ups for you. You still have to do it.
Yep.
So our whole bent has always been empowerment and education and transferring whatever's in between my ears and Rachel's ears over to our clients, and teaching them, quite frankly, like how to, what labs are important, what do they mean, how to interpret it, what to do about it from a natural medicine point of view. So it's interesting that you say that because we've spent the last decade also creating a system where when people exit our care, whatever that happens to be, or our consultations or whatever you want to call it, we move them into our alumni group. But hopefully they have been empowered to take that responsibility for the health. And certainly people will cycle back to us. Like I've been doing this, but now I need a little bit more help. So I don't know that it's interesting. Like I mean this from my heart to James, to answer your question. I think all of us that are in this preventive field or longevity field or whatever it is, I think most of us want our clients to feel empowered and out there working independently because we have to transfer that. But at the same time, I'm just speaking the reality of the situation. Some people are able to do that and some people aren't able to do that. Some people need, I don't want to say hand holding, but some people need someone to walk with them, beside them, to help them stand back up, to be the footprints in the sand that sometimes we're carrying them. And what Dr. Chong was saying earlier, it's a privilege. It's really a unique thing, or James, I'm sorry, you were saying a unique thing to find a doctor that's willing to walk that walk with you. Because it's a heavy burden to carry. And quite frankly, I don't know many doctors that are willing to do that. And it's one of the reasons I didn't say this earlier in the show. And James, I'm going over to you. I wanted to be clear. I personally consulted with Dr. Chong for my own cardiovascular health. So just to let you know, like the depth of this, it's very real to me. And having Dr. Chong on the show is a very real discussion. But James, I want to pass it back over to you. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mentioned to you the prolific amount of people I've scheduled into chiropractic services. I tell people this. It's very clear and very honest, Dr. Chong and Dr. Jason. I tell people if I don't tell you the truth about chiropractic today, somebody else will close you for drugs or surgery. It's just the way that the medical system is built. And that's our burden of truth is we have to tell people the truth about what we do to prevent them from going down the evil empire path of what happens when people don't have good guides. And maybe this could be a reformat for the whole system.
Oh boy.
Maybe people could become lifetime patients of yours, not because they need your care, but because they need your guidance. And maybe we could check in with people annually as a marketing strategy and saying, hey, just want to check in on you. I love you. I appreciate
dentists do
you.
it twice a year. Dentists do it twice a year. I think that
Yeah.
we can have a cardiovascular checkup twice a year. You know, I think
Yeah,
it's the thing to do.
and I love your heart. You know, you could say this is me loving your heart because I want to see you have the best life possible. It's just a checkup. And not that they need you, but my good friend Patrick Smith, he's a chiropractor, and he gives these patient education lectures once a week called Doctors Talks, Spinal Health Talks. And he says at the end of it, your name's Dr. Daniel, I'm James. You're going to be my doctor, and I'm going to be your patient till one of us blows up. And that's a commitment, my friend. And if we took that as serious as a heart attack, pun intended, if we took that as serious as a heart attack, that you're going to be these people's guides from the day you met them to the day they no longer exist, that's a commitment that we need to make in the health model. And that's the approach that I think that people are really looking for. I love the catch and release model that you practice and what Dr. Jason practices. Like, hey, take responsibility of your own shit. But I really think that even if you pass them on to someone else and say, hey, I'm going to take care of you at this triage point, and now you're going to be doing this. Like, it's a pass on type method even. But I think that people are looking for this long-term relationship in the medical world. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. But I think it gives a new looking glass for people to start considering what options are out there for them and their families. And it's not some big bad thing I have to go do and see the doctor.
Can I just comment on that too? I've never heard anybody say, how long do I need to keep seeing my medical doctor? Like, nobody says that. They're like, I just have a doctor. Like, I have a doctor and it's my doctor, my family doctor. This guy or lady treated my mom and dad and me and my sisters, and now they brought somebody in, they're treating my kids. And it's like, this is the way it goes. I mean, whether you're in an ology specialty or family practice or general practice, internal medicine, whatever it happens to be, we tend to see this thing and no one questions that I'm going to stick with this person until one of us blows up. Like, unless you get frustrated. I mean, generally, the only time people change doctors, generally
they move.
Yeah, they move, or somebody's just horribly frustrated, or they're doctor hopping because they're just not. I mean, there's reasons, but mostly, overwhelmingly, people stick with them for life. And it's interesting because, you know, with my patients or clients, I don't like to call them patients, but my clients, I, as I said, want to do everything I can to get them out the door. I love them, but also I have people I've worked with for like 15, 20 years, you know? So, I mean, and I love those people. I mean, quite frankly, those are my favorite clients. I love everybody, but my favorite clients are the people that we have history with because I know what's going on. And then when there's a hiccup, like, it makes sense in context because I'm like, oh, I know this person. What's going on, Kelly? Let's talk about it. It gives me more context. And those people don't need me. Yeah, I see it too, Rachel. Those people don't need me day to day, you know, or regular visits, but they like having me there in their back pocket should anything come up. They like those regular annual or biannual checkups. And I think there's a lot of room in preventive cardiology for this too. I just want to double down on that.
It's like cleaning up the forest.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Rachel had a good question here. She's curious about what first steps to take to support cardiology or your cardiovascular health. I had a similar question, which was, what's the number one thing people can do to prevent sudden cardiac death? I mean, I'm very focused on this for obvious reasons. So, you know, same question, you know, like, what do we do? Like, what's the number one thing, first step we should do?
Well, technically, sudden cardiac death it can happen for more than one underlying type of problem, right? So sometimes it's literally an arrhythmia that just happens for a random reason potentially, or something going on with the person's heart that would be very hard to detect with any type of standard testing that you do. So those people aside, the people who are mostly, you know, the vast majority of the cardiac related deaths are happening due to massive heart attacks. So when we're talking about that, that's a different story. And there's lots that you can do to evaluate for that. So, my mantra that I go by in my practice is test and don't guess. So I actually think that the number one thing to do to start exploring how to prevent heart attacks and strokes is to take a look on the inside as well as you can to see where you're at. Because for me, with the people I work with, that has a huge impact on the level of I don't know what you want to call it, aggressiveness, so to speak, that my recommendations are going to be, founded in, and then certainly the level of enthusiasm for following all of these recommendations I may be making to somebody, you know, like I already said, I think I don't know if I said it on air or not, but if people's artery linings being inflamed and unhealthy felt in the same way that a person with a stomach ache or a headache feels, everybody would be clamoring after preventive cardiologists to go say, what's the matter with me? Why does this hurt so much? But unfortunately, they don't feel any of that. And probably the most mind-boggling stat I've ever heard in cardiovascular disease medicine is that almost like of the literally one heart attack that happens every approximately 30 seconds in this country, almost half of them, the first symptom that the person has that anything is wrong at all is the heart attack or the death that happens as a result of the heart attack. So to me, the number one step is starting to understand where your body's at, what tendencies you have, et cetera, and then going from there.
I got to jump right in because I'm hot on this right now. I'm 100% in agreement with you. And I could throw out some statistics that, my wife sometimes says that most like 90% of statistics are made up on the spot, right? I can give some good educated guesstimates here though. And I've heard various numbers, but we're going to be darn close. I've heard that by the time someone is diagnosed with cardiovascular disease, we are already seeing a conservative 50, 60, 70% of either blockage or inflammation or basically a degradation of the cardiac tree before they're ever diagnosed. And if we look at folks that have heart attacks specifically, I want to double down on what you said. Overwhelmingly, the first symptom of a heart attack for most people is not like on TV where it's like, oh, I've got chest pain or jaw pain in my arm and all this stuff. It's death. People die. They just die. That's the first sign of a heart attack for most people. It's not Hollywood. People flip and die. They just die.
Yeah.
So coming back to that specifically, we talked about testing and imaging, and I'm not sure how I want to ask this question, but it's a follow-up question to imaging and testing. I do what I think is a pretty good cardiovascular screen, and I can rattle off some stuff. I won't do it all, but like APO, A1 and B and ratios and lipase and all the inflammatory markers and plaques and all this, fibrinogen. I can keep going on and on. There's a bunch of stuff that we can check. But ultimately, yes, those are clues. I think those are clues. I think that imaging, arterial calcification scores, I'm not sure if that's what you're chatting about or mentioning that you do imaging, but I think that those can be important. I have a follow-up to the calcification score that I want to follow with. But when you say imaging, I just want to get some clarity from you. What kind of imaging is the most useful for preventive cardiology? Like what imaging would you get done?
Where do we go?
Yeah.
Yeah. So technically for me, that depends on the person.
Okay.
And especially how old they are, and also to some degree their sex, male or female. So
can we just pause for a second and just say 46-year-old man lives in Colorado, myself.
46-year-old guy in Grand Junction, Colorado.
Let's just start with that. Let's go
You're
straight
done
to the
for.
matter.
Those people are just, you got nothing that you can do. So the reason why I say that is, a lot of people are getting more and more familiar with calcium scoring as a primary means of screening for cardiovascular disease, which for those that don't know, it's a CT scan of the arteries in your heart that is detecting any plaques in and around the coronary arteries that have calcified. It's quite strong in the realm of predictive value for people, especially the older that they are. And the reason why I say that is the younger you are, even if you have full-on cardiovascular disease developing in your arteries, you may not have had any of the plaques there start to calcify yet, which is a later stage of the disease.
Mhm.
So the younger and younger, so 46, for example, the younger somebody is, the more and more unlikely it is for them to have plaque present that has calcified. It does not necessarily mean, though, that they don't have any plaque. So
Mm.
I just tell people the younger you are, the less meaningful a zero calcium score is to me. And the older you are, the more meaningful a zero calcium score is.
Mm.
Yes, James.
I mean, this is so important for people to hear this stuff. So thank you for sharing this because I had no idea. Like I'm out in left field. Like I have no idea what any of this means. So I'm sure there's people out there that'll be digesting this content and this information and be like, damn, I need that. But
Yeah.
I'll just go back in time. The mindset that I had growing up around the men I grew up with was everybody's afraid of the damn doctor. Like we wouldn't go to the doctor unless our leg was fucking falling off. Like we stayed away from that dude or that gal. Like
Then
it
you
was
just pour
not.
some Robitussin on it and it's fine. You know, I mean, let's just be real.
We took a shot of whiskey, okay. But that was Dr. Jack Daniels ruled my house, and that was the way that people like dealt with it. Like we wouldn't go see the doctor. Sorry to say, I lost 2 brothers since 2020. Also, my second oldest brother passed away at 53, had open heart surgery at 40 years old. So that's where the mindset gets you. That's what I'm trying to tell people. And Jason's opening up with his dad and with his brother. Like the mindset of don't go see the doctor will kill you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, the analogous statement that I want to make is Jason talked about a cardiovascular tree. Well, if you just go outside right now and you go and look at a tree, you can see the ones that are healthy. They're green and they look amazing and they look vibrant and they look vital. If you go outside and you see a tree that looks gray and the bark's falling off and it's not getting leaves, that's what happens when you have plaque and calcium scoring on your arteries. Your tree is dying. The tree is dying inside of you. So the analogous statement is don't be afraid of doctors and go get your tree checked. Like, like get yourself a cardiologist that's going to be healthy for you. But follow up. I know Jason's hot to trot. Where can people go that's not in the big box medicine system to get these types of services at a cash price?
Do you want to say something, Jason?
I'm gonna let you guys take that, but I'm just gonna plant a seed. I want to come just so that we're going where we're going, or where I want to at least ask this question. I want to talk about arterial pressure and elasticity. I want to come back to that with the calcium scoring. So I'll plant that seed now.
More doctor talk, but
I want to go back to what James is talking about. This is very important. Where can people go to get this advanced testing?
Cash payment? Where they don't even have to pay the insurance bullshit.
Good doctor.
So just briefly, there's a second type of so in my practice when I'm screening people, there's basically 2 options. One is a calcium score, which is again dependent on the person, how old they are, etc., the likelihood or not that I'm going to recommend that. The second option is specifically what you would call a CIMT ultrasound. C as in cat, I, M as in Mary, T as in Tom. That is an ultrasound done of the carotid arteries in your neck. And the value of that imaging study is that unlike the calcium score, it picks up on any plaque that's there, whether it has calcified or not. And if you're using a good company, it's going to detect tiny little things that are just starting to happen, as well as other subtle aspects of vascular health, which you'd call generally vascular aging assessment. So the point is it's going to sometimes find things going on with people a lot earlier than you would be able to tell anybody with a calcium score of 0 has going on. The only downside is that it's doing their carotid arteries and not looking at the coronary arteries feeding your heart. On average, they correlate. So a lot of time, on average, you're going to see relatively similar findings from place to place. So if you see really clean arteries in your carotid arteries, it's pretty unusual to have a bunch of plaque actually present in your coronary arteries. But I wouldn't say that's not possible because I've seen it myself where I have somebody with no plaque in their coronary arteries and actually very high amount of plaque around their coronary arteries. So there's no perfect screening test, unfortunately, but anything is better than nothing. And when you couple that with a thorough history, thorough understanding of family history, genetic tendencies, and also lab testing, you can usually come away with a pretty darn good assessment of where people are at. There are other imaging studies that are more advanced and find way more stuff out that I'm happy to talk about too, but that's getting a little bit off into the weeds. So that's kind of the general idea for that.
But the secondary follow-up is, where do people go? Like, where do people
sorry, yes.
go that want to pay cash for this?
Yes. So my experience has been, at least, that when we're talking about a calcium score, you still need a quote unquote doctor's order. You can pay for it by cash. You don't have to get your insurance company to okay it, etc. And most cities that offer calcium scores, which are pretty much everywhere now, it's very inexpensive relative to other imaging studies. Somewhere between $100 and $300, depending on where we're talking about. The ultrasound that I'm talking about, there are people may be familiar with. I'm not going to name companies, but there are companies that are going around the country doing carotid ultrasound screening via a different technology that's not nearly as sensitive to the CIMT ultrasound that I'm talking about. So that the only unfortunate thing with CIMTs is that they're not readily available in every city. But where they are, oftentimes you can go and get that done without a doctor's order. So I'm happy to provide names of a couple companies that are national companies that send ultrasound technicians to clinics around the country.
Wow.
That you can reach out to see, is there anybody in my area that's running these tests where I am, and start there. So I don't know how you guys are with naming company names or whatever.
Please
but
do.
So I'm so used to speak. I just spoke at a cardiology conference where you're not allowed to name the name of any company at all. So I'm like,
there's no CEUs with this. So
okay. So there's two companies. One is called Vaso Labs, and the other is called Cardio Risk. Those are the two that I know of that are high level CIMT ultrasound testing that are sending technicians around the country to offer testing.
Nice.
So that's the best option. And then the only other thing I wanted to just briefly comment on, I don't remember where it came up. The idea, again, that you're going to get symptoms of something going on is it needs to be completely let go of. A lot of times I've literally talked to people who are like, oh, I was a little worried about this or that symptom, so my doctor had me do a stress test and I passed it. So a stress test being going on the treadmill and having an EKG and just watching how your heart behaves. And I passed that, so I'm fine. Without understanding that most people who have a blockage that's just less than about 75% are going to typically pass a stress test. So going and getting a stress test and passing that just means you don't have a massive blockage that's almost completely occluding your entire artery.
Yeah.
So it's not a good means of screening for what's going on, in my opinion.
It's true, because again, coming back to how degraded is the cardiovascular tree or the system by the time we have the heart attack, they're saying that you're probably 80-90+% occluded or blocked by the time we have the heart attack. So I want to come back to preventive cardiology again, because it's super important. Again, if we can save 800-900,000 lives in a year, I want all cardiologists getting behind this instead of reactive cardiology. I want proactive cardiology. That said, I came across, and again, I just to out myself, until recently I had been on hypertensive medication and sometimes the beta blockers and crap for my heart. I mean, that we've talked about it. I'm not on it anymore, thanks to some of the recommendations that you gave me, and then me doing the push-ups, right? So I'm not on that anymore. But the reality is, I follow this stuff. I mean, again, my family, myself, etc. I came across some words that I had never heard of before, or a concept that I didn't really fully understand until I jumped on a call with a brilliant, tech, person from the Valley named Catherine Liao. And we had a great discussion about a device that just went public. And I'm going to say this device, I have one. That's why I fell in love with this conversation. It's called Connect, CONN, Connect, CONNEQT, playing on the QT interval for cardiac health, obviously. The interesting thing about this, and this is what fascinated me with it, I'd love to get your thing. They said, your labs may look good, right? Your calcium score may look good, but we can test these things. And I'm going to tell you what they are. And I want to get your opinion on it. So hold on, let me just find my notes. Where did they go? Where did they go? Oh, here they are. Perfect. So of course, blood pressure, right? Heart rate, same stuff as everybody. But then they also are identifying things like central blood pressure, which I think is interesting. They're looking at central pulse pressure. So the actual pulse of the pressure, the pressure behind the pulse. They're looking at something called augmentation pressure, which I don't even know what that is, but they say it's a marker of arterial stiffness, and also something called subendocardial viability ratio, or the SEVR, looking at the demand of oxygenated blood to the myocardium. It's a lot of big words there. But the thing that I'm taking away from it is they can look at with their device, and it's a brachial device. It's like a blood pressure cuff is what it looks like, but they can read the actual basically arterial elasticity. And when I was talking with Catherine based on their metrics, she said that they think, and the research has shown, and they are FDA cleared, and all that kind of stuff, that the research shows clearly that if we can identify this before the labs shift, before we start to see the stiffness or the calcium scores increasing, we might be able to identify cardiovascular disease 20 to 30 years, 2 or 3 decades earlier than by the time it's showing up in 50, 60, 70s. And I'm fascinated by this because the device itself, I don't want to overpromote the company, but the device is very affordable. Like it's stupidly affordable. And their argument is, let's get it into the hands of the consumers. Let's get it into the hands of the doctors so we can measure this stuff so that we can take action, whatever that happens to be, as early as possible. I think for you and I, it would be lifestyle modifications and, things, diet, lifestyles, things like that. And maybe some other things as well. But I'm fascinated by SEVR. If again, I don't even know what that is. Subendocardial viability ratio, and then the augmentation pressure. I know that's a lot to throw at you. They were new for me. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't want to be a downer.
Okay.
So let me unpack that a little bit. So
yeah, please do, because I'm learning.
So those types of devices are amazing and awesome, and they're going to help, the way I view it, help identify circumstances inside a person's vascular system that are going to exacerbate the tendencies that they may have or not towards forming plaque in their arteries. So in other words, like when the more and more dysfunctional your artery linings are, the more and more stiff they are, the less well they're behaving relative to optimal, the more and more of what you'd call like a fertile ground you have forming for the potential formation of plaque. So it's absolutely true that anybody that you find with that type of testing to be, exhibiting unhealthy arteries, as a general way of putting it, they are absolutely going to be at increased risk for plaque developing in their arteries. So I'm all for testing like that as one angle of assessing risk. However, and here's the bummer part. I mean, there are studies showing that on unfortunately, like miscarried children, for example, or fetuses that already, in some cases, already are exhibiting the early signs of plaque development in arteries. There are studies that have been done on children under the age of 10 who died of accidents, doing autopsies and examining their arteries, already finding evidence of cardiovascular disease forming in significant numbers of them, and on and on. There's and to the point where in some of these cases, especially these younger people, they're going to pass tests like that, like you're talking about, with flying colors. Their artery function is going to be perfect, but if there's certain circumstances at play in their bodies on an individual basis, they may still already be forming plaque at a very, very, very early age. So luckily and thankfully, those people that I'm talking about are not the norm necessarily, but but they're a different class of risk, that it's coming from other angles. Hopefully that makes sense, that aren't necessarily to do yet with vascular dysfunction that's going to start happening with poor nutrition, high stress, all these other things that start to impact vascular function over time, that are going to show up on those test results that you're talking about. So it's why I place such a great, even though I said what I said about genetic predisposition not necessarily defining the outcome, I still put great emphasis on understanding people's family histories and the background and tendencies that they have in their families. And then when we find people who are showing like evidence of really early heart attacks and things like that, going to whatever degree we can to find where they're at, whether or not it includes devices that like that. So hopefully that all makes sense.
Well, I think something that links into this is what Jason's talking about, what you're talking about, and people actually doing a little bit of like investigation, is it builds awareness.
Yeah.
And it's going to start a conversation, and it's going to change the conversation of that family, of that relationship, of that individual. And my call to action for people is take a health vacation. Go find one of these facilities with vaso labs or cardio risk, and take your family there and do this testing and look at it as a benefit to your future rather than a detriment of something I have to go do.
Yeah, and don't get. I want to just say one other thing real quick. Sorry, don't get me wrong. The vast majority of people that we work with, Jason, are gonna be in that age range where testing like you're talking about is going to be super useful, because a lot of times that type of stuff is already going on with those people. It's just that. Go ahead.
It changes the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It changes the tone of reality. And I think that's what
especially if they have a 0 calcium score. If they get that done and they're like, "Oh, I'm good," and then they get the type of testing you're talking
pass your stress, pass the calcium score, and you're like, you're good to go. And then they die of a heart attack.
They need more.
And preventative things, once again, health vacation, do it once a week. Health vacation, go get some cardio, get the blood pumping, get the body moving. And sedentary lifestyle is something that I think is a huge contributor to people getting these predispositions. And when they test, they're like, oh shit, what do I do now? So maybe we could give some solution to that oh shit moment too.
I like that. I want to give Dr. Chong, if you'd like to, if there's something you want to throw out there, but I have another question for you. I didn't mean to jump right in.
No, go ahead.
So earlier, I want to just make sure that I'm right in what I'm saying too. Earlier this year, I believe, in March, I'm not sure, I might have the date wrong, but earlier this year, Dr. Kilmer McCauley died. And I'm going to just help everybody remember who this man is. Dr. Kilmer McCauley is, at the time anyway, he died at 91 early this year. He was who they based Doogie Howser MD on. One of the youngest graduates from Harvard, cardiologist. And he was doing his cardiovascular research, and what he was, his studies there. And he came up that everyone that he was researching that had these heart attacks, or overwhelmingly, they had a high amount of homocysteine in their body, in their bloodstream. So homocysteine, and he's like, like the D.D. Palmer of chiropractic, Eureka, I discovered the cure for deafness with adjustments, and then couldn't quite reproduce it, kind of with Kilmer McCauley. He's like, Eureka, I think I found something really important for cardiovascular disease and heart attacks, and it's homocysteine, and I think it can be reduced with a simple amount of B vitamins that could save lots and lots of lives. I'm going to read you the New York Times article the day he died, or not the whole article, but the thing. Kilmer McCauley, 91, dies. Pathologist vindicated in heart disease theory. His studies showed that a B vitamin deficiency could cause hardened arteries. It took the medical profession more than, and it says a decade. I'm going to say it was many decades to, quote, catch up. And I'm also going to say, I don't think they've caught up yet. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this pioneer, homocysteine, and its relationship to the hardening of the arteries.
I don't know who that is, but that's very cool that he's who originally came up with that idea. I mean, homocysteine, I screen on every patient.
Yeah.
I look at it, going back to earlier what James was talking about, this analogy with um, uh, Smokey the Bear. I'm not kidding you, James. I literally, like I just said, I just spoke at a cardiology conference a couple of weeks ago, and one of my slides literally had Smokey the Bear on it at the end saying only you can prevent forest fires, because an analogy I use to describe plaque and developing in arteries is like a fire burning, like a wildfire burning in your artery linings. And so, long story short, with that analogy, the way I look at it is, essentially when you have the potential for a fire to start that you don't want to start, like in this neck of the woods where I'm at certain times in the summer, you go camping, there's no campfires allowed. And so if you're trying to like stop somebody from making a campfire, and you're like, well, what do they need to make that fire? They need wood and they need matches, right? But then if you also have lighter fluid or gasoline or something like that, it's going to just make the fire grow much more quickly, right? And get out of control and possibly cause a major problem. And so I look at homocysteine as a primary, elevated homocysteine, and all that means as a primary angle of lighter fluid or gasoline to a smoldering fire that might otherwise not necessarily ever get out of control. If you go by the latest research and evaluating its role as an what you call an independent factor, it's not as well proven to be sort of like in and of itself on its own able to cause cardiovascular disease. But the point is, it's there's a gray area there. Like people, almost everybody is almost on, how you hear like people are forming little cancers all the time and then they're getting rid of them. Whatever. There is the potential for plaque to form in people happening frequently throughout their lives in their early, even when they're really healthy and young. And when you have certain things like high homocysteine levels also present, it's absolutely can be the spark that really sets the thing ablaze, so to speak, even if it's not necessarily like a match or wood part of the equation. So it's absolutely crucial, in my opinion. And it's the other thing that's so maddening about it is it's very easy to treat in the vast majority of people.
Right.
Literally just give them the nutrients that they need to have it be better under control, and then that risk is basically gone. So it's a huge thing for sure.
Yeah, I just want to say two things to this. Oh, one thing, and then follow-up question. Homocysteine, I check it all the time too, with people, and I love the analogy of like an accelerant is what we're talking about, pouring an accelerant on an already smoldering fire. I think that's a brilliant way to say it. And we didn't even unpack what like the bigger word that we're talking about which is methylation. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole today, but maybe we'll have you back on to talk about it. But methylation and homocysteine, just for everybody listening, because you're like, what are those words? You might have heard people refer to the mother effer gene. That's what they nicely refer to it as, the mother effer gene, MTHFR, because it looks like a bad word. We're talking about genetics here again. We're talking about, other things like COMT, other parts of genetics, this methylation pathway. But I want to go back to what Dr. Chong just said. It's one of those things, I don't even know how much it is to test it, but like, I think with like cash-based labs, it's like 10, 15 bucks or something. I mean, it's not even a lot, maybe even less. I have no idea. It's not much. And then to treat it, like you said, I mean, we just can put B vitamins, or at least methylated B vitamins, at it. And it resolves. Like, it's the cheapest. It's like for 2-3 cents a day, you can take the accelerant away from your cardiovascular tree. I mean, maybe it's more than a few cents, but not much. 5 cents, 8 cents. It's B vitamins. It can't be much. It's not much. So I want to just say that. Thank you for saying all that. But I want to go back to that title, because the title caught me. He's vindicated. B vitamin deficiency causes hardened arteries, and it took the medical profession. And again, they said more than a decade. I mean, this guy, it's like 3, 4, 5 decades. I don't know how long ago he did this, but it's been many decades. Do you think the medical profession is caught up with this idea that homocysteine is an accelerant on a smoldering fire? Our cardiologists, like the general run of the mill, I'm going to go do my stress test, I'm going to, this and that. Are they thinking like, I better check this person's homocysteine for $4 and treat them for 5 cents? I mean, are they thinking that?
Not that I can tell. I see a lot of people already who've been diagnosed, had lab testing done, so on and so forth through their PCP cardiologists. I never see homocysteines run ever,
Right.
ever.
Right. So it
So
brings back to what I want to, like, we've kind of been hinting around this and we've talked about it, but I just want everyone to know that we had Dr. Chong on the show today because he goes to the depths with you, not just based on you're my patient and breathing. And, because of that, everybody gets the same thing. I mean, he's thinking about age, sex, genetics, from I would call it a functional medicine point of view, but functional chemistry, functional nutrition, lifestyle medicine. I just want to say that, if you're looking for someone that's going to go the distance with you for cardiovascular disease, I can't think of many people that would even be in the same class as you. So I just want to say that if you're listening, connect with Dr. Chong. I'll just say it now and then we'll jump over to James. If you want to connect with Dr. Chong again, it's vital-human.com. And we'll talk more about that, but they can even schedule an appointment with you and see if they're a good fit to work with you at that site. So go ahead.
Well, before you guys transition to that segment there, my closing statement was, what happens when people get to, oh shit?
Yeah.
Like, I have something to do now. So maybe you can share with people some solutions on how they can balance out nutrition and lifestyle for better cardiovascular health, or if they do get the oh shit moment, what that next step might be.
Yeah. So my assumption by the oh shit moment is that you mean like we found plaque in their arteries, essentially.
Or you find some markers within their homocysteine and you're like, oh boy. Or you find some type of a marker that gives you like the gulp in your throat that you're like, oh shit. Now
my cholesterol came back at 453.
Now I got
no, I said my cholesterol came back at 453. Do I need to be concerned?
Yeah.
Like as a provider, you're like, oh boy, I have the gulp moment. I have to tell this person something that they're gonna have to
do something.
You got to put a new timing belt. You got to put a new timing belt in your heart.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say that the vast majority of people I see are not what I would consider like standard Americans. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but a lot of the people that I see have already been down the road of doing a lot of the, at least to some degree, a lot of the basic stuff, trying to eat well, trying to exercise, etc. And so it's not a common conversation, in other words, in my practice, to be saying like, you know what, maybe you should cut out the Twinkies, that type of perspective. It's more like, wow, what do we need to do to figure out why you're still progressing down this road of significant cardiovascular disease, despite eating, I say this better, to people all the time, like you're already eating better than 90% of America. A lot of times are the initial intake forms that I see with people when they list out their diet, they're eating really well, etc. So to answer that question from that perspective, James, is a challenge because it's totally individual. Like I have to look at what they've already been doing and try to understand why things are still happening. Sometimes that type of thing gets uncovered with lab testing. But if we were to sidestep that and look at it more from the average American, maybe finding out that their father just had a heart attack or whatever, and that they don't want to, that's their oh shit moment, or they do their first set of labs with their primary care doctor and they're, like Jason said, their LDL's through the roof or whatever. Those people, always, we just start with the basics, like how much are you moving,
That's
what are you
I'm
eating,
getting at.
How much are you moving, what are you eating, how are you sleeping, what's your stress levels. Those are like huge, crucial things. Another thing that a couple of things that are very, very important that are less commonly recognized as crucial factors would be being evaluated for sleep apnea and also what your dental health is. So those are things that a lot of people don't realize are very, very potentially potently connected to cardiovascular disease risk. So one of the questions on my questionnaire is, do you see a dentist regularly, like we were kind of joking about earlier? And most importantly, do you get cleanings regularly? Because if we keep the bacterial count in an appropriate place, and if you're lucky enough to be able to see a dentist, there's some dentists out there that actually test the saliva to look at the different types of bacteria that are in the mouth, and some of which are strongly correlated with cardiovascular disease risk. If you're doing a good job with dental hygiene, that's huge. So It's very, very basic stuff. It's not like this or that specific supplement or this or that specific diet, because even diet is like a whole 5-hour discussion in and of itself, as I'm sure you guys would agree. I don't think there's any one specific defined diet that every single person is going to thrive the same way on, especially cardiovascularly, other than like obviously nobody should be eating crap. So that's why I guess, to try to just answer that question, the average person, what would they do? Those are the primary areas I'm looking at, like food, movement, stress levels, sleep, dental health, making sure you don't have sleep apnea, or some means of evaluating your sleep quality are super crucial for me.
It's all very good. I'll just summarize it in a couple sentences.
Yeah.
If you eat shit and drink shit, your body will be shit.
Yeah.
And then you'll need a functional medicine doctor and Daniel Chong.
James, you should be teaching at the schools. Like literally, like this is what doctors need to hear. They need to
Absolutely. I totally agree. The simpler, the better.
Yeah.
If you eat shit, you drink shit, you'll be shit. And a really kind of gnarly analogy is, I'm like, hey, if you knew there was just like a 1% piece of poop in your glass of water, would you drink it?
Right.
Probably not.
Probably
like if
not.
I said, hey, there's just a little bit of poop in your water.
It's just a little.
Not drinking that today. Nope. I'll get another one.
Yeah.
And I think if people thought about that as like what they eat and what they drink, is that actually is poop.
Yeah.
And if they knew that by consuming it, it would make them sick, and it's poison, and it's ruining your arteries and your vascular tree and your pulmonary system.
Yeah.
They would.
I mean, I just want to say really quick about that. Like that is a classic example of people knew what was happening in their vascular system, even after one single meal. They would stop eating certain foods, like
poison.
Yeah, there's
It's
research
poison.
that shows, the type of testing that Jason was talking about earlier with vascular function and vascular stiffness and how the endothelium is working, etc. They've clearly done research, like one bad meal throws off vascular function for 4 to 6 hours. And if you're doing that 3 times a day, you're essentially always, except for a few hours while you're sleeping, in a state of unhealthy vascular function on an ongoing basis. But people can't feel that. So they don't really have any motivation to change that until they really feel horrible things. So
I know Jason wants to jump in, but I have one last thing. I was doing a project for a weight loss company, and they told me what like sugar looked like under a microscope, and it forever changed my viewpoints on high sugar diets. They said it looked like glass shards, and it looked like very jagged granular things that were going through your bloodstream. And what it's doing is it's scarring up the vascular system. Whether you like it or not, all that sugar you're consuming is destroying your vascular system. And it's going through like a freight train with little glass shards, and it's scarring you up and creating this inflammation in your vascular system, because that's the element of the what you're consuming is doing, whether you like it or not, whether it tastes sweet, whether you're addicted to it, whatever it might be. When you're consuming it at a microscopic level, it is destroying and scarring and causing all this damage inside of your vascular system. And if people knew that, they'd be like, oh, I kind of don't like sugar that much, or maybe I'll do it once a week, or definitely I'm not drinking soda anymore, or definitely I'm not doing XYZ anymore. Definitely I'm not going to eat half a carton of ice cream tonight like I do every night. Like, we have to start to look at it from a very practical standpoint. And I think that that's the most practical standpoint I could give an analogy to and a visual to, for people to say, that's poop in my water. I don't want that.
I got to remember that one.
A really good one. I mean, it's true. It's like with, I mean, I understand that without getting details, but my field is primarily autoimmunity. And so I work a lot with people with those things. And I've gotten into these discussions with other autoimmune focused doctors. And I come from the perspective, having done thousands and thousands and thousands of laboratory testing, like you said, the magic's in the follow-up test, right? Where I can see like evidence that their antibodies come down as we lower their allostatic load, as we help them, drink water and eat the right way and move the right way, and nervous system regulation and sleep and be part of community and a new identity and all this stuff. And then, start to get nutrients into their system and their body balance. I literally start to see, and get the junk out, whether it be molds or heavy metals or whatever, like the big picture that all of us do to clean up these systems, these dirty fish tanks, right? I see those antibodies coming down all the time, even though my colleagues swear that that's an impossibility. I see people go into remission all the time. And then when we see that trend and then we see them pop out of remission, I can ask that client, what's changed? And, almost always, honestly, it's that they're off plan a little bit. They're just, they're having too much high fructose corn syrup of some sort. I'm not even joking. Right. So I have a question for you, just kind of giving that context, because I tell my patients, and what I'm hearing from you, I think, and I don't want to put words in your head, but for my patients with autoimmunity and all this, side quests that go with that, right? The sequelae. I tell them, I don't care what you've been told. I don't care how long you've been told it. If you can hear my voice, there's still hope for your future, for your health. I mean, if you're breathing, basically, there's still hope. I want to come to cardio, and I feel confident saying that in autoimmunity and chronic disease. I want to come over to cardiology. Is there a point of no return? Is there a point where I can hear your voice, Dr. Chong, but I'm like 98% gone and too fragile to do anything? I mean, I'm just curious. Is there a point of no return? Should people bail, or is it like the best time to start is right now?
This is getting a little weird, because this is now the second time that one of you two has said something that's like exactly what I say or whatever. So I literally,
we are psychic. I'm just going to say that's part of it. We haven't shared that with everybody yet, but part of our magic is that we're psychic.
I want to know that before I come on next time. I mean, literally. So there's a guy you guys might know, John Kabat-Zinn. He's an author.
Wherever you go, there you are. Yeah.
Yes. And my favorite quote of all time is from him, and it's literally just says, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you.
Yes.
And that's what I tell people all the time. And I see some people, unfortunately, in very, very, very bad ways. I'm not in emergency rooms working with people, but some people are on the verge of that, or just came from that and are trying to recover from what they just experienced. So people in very bad situations, and yet I would never ever tell somebody that there's nothing to do. So, because I definitely believe that there's constant effort on an ongoing basis in your body to be as healthy as possible until the last breath that you breathe. And so everything that we can do to support that is the primary objective, to support the healing capacity in your body. And so that's my general mindset. And there is also, on top of that, evidence to support what I'm saying. Looking in my practice, looking at the people I trained with, people who were like literally given less than a year to live because they were quote unquote failed cardiovascular cases with no more interventions that could be done, no more place to put a stent, bypasses failing, etc., living 20 more years by finding a way to live that supports the health and function of their bodies. So it's not easy, don't get me wrong. These people have to do super hard work sometimes and stay dedicated to that work the vast majority of the time that they're of their lives each day. But it's absolutely possible. And I'll just say that one of the biggest issues I have with the conventional medical system is the lack of messaging to patients surrounding that type of mindset. It's always more like, if you don't do this, then you're gonna die, and there's very little support given to people, sort of like what they're capable of, what changes can be done that can change their lives dramatically. They're not given that confidence almost ever, and they should be. So that's kind of how I would answer that.
I want to come back to that too. And because you said something really interesting, this happens a lot in medicine. You've got the white coat telling you, we've done everything, Jenny. There's nothing, Sam. There's nothing else we can do. You're gonna, why don't you better talk to your family. You've got 3 months, year, maybe. Right.
Yeah.
But then you're like, hey, Dr. Cardiologist, did you even check their homocysteine? $4. Did you do that? No. Hey, did you check their this? Did you do this? I mean, did you talk to them about getting high fructose corn syrup out of their diet? And yeah, I mean, like all this basic stuff that and I know, and I hope every provider knows, but has just forgotten or something. But I hope they know it. There's those doctors, most of them that are, I mean, it's the cancer doctors too. There's nothing that can be done. I say bullshit. You're not God. You don't know. I'm like, let's do everything we can. I mean, maybe the drugs didn't work. Maybe the invasive procedure of, cut, poison, burn didn't help. But is there something else that we can do? And then I come back to where we started our whole conversation. Why do we wait until the end to intervene? And I come back to if we can save 800, 900,000 lives a year, why are cardiologists specifically, not the U type of preventive cardiology, but the conventional cardiologists, why do they say such asinine things? They have to be, I hope, reading the literature and know what I would hope, although there is that old joke. If you ever want to hide something from your doctor, just publish it in their journals, because doctors don't read. And it's Dr. Chong laughed because he knows I'm correct. Here's my question, Dr. Daniel Chong. What don't doctors know that they need to know to make an impact? What needs to be done with their training?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna give a little bit of benefit of the doubt here to some in the conventional realm. To me, what they don't know is heavily a product of the system itself and the lack of willingness to sort of support a model that would have them need to learn the type of stuff that we're talking about that they could teach their patients and then give them the time to teach them. That none of that's around. So they're almost like pigeon. I look at the average cardiologist as an incredibly caring doctor who's trying to operate to save somebody's life from within the confines of a very tightly defined box that is not necessarily containing nearly enough things to actually get them to thrive, but more just to survive, right? So they're doing the best they can, but they're stuck inside of this entirely broken model, in my opinion. That's not necessarily their fault or anything like that. I mean, obviously, you're going to have some that are less caring than others, but so that's kind of the way that I think about that whole perspective, and so that's why I'll just say I've lost the mindset of we need to fix the system. I'm now of the mindset of we need an entirely separate system that works 100% its own way. It's not fixing that. It's totally broken. And it's too ingrained. We need a parallel, what's that Buckminster Fuller?
Yeah, we need a new paradigm that's so great that it makes the other one obsolete, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need. And I think that if it was available, it would be attractive to even these doctors who are stuck in this other model, because it's not rocket science, to see how much better that approach is of being that way. But they need to be able to see it possible. They need to be able to see that it's going to allow them to make a living and all of that type of. That's a whole nother discussion, but that's really kind of where I'm at with that whole thing. So that's my, yeah. Go ahead, James.
I think it's really helpful for people to hear. I do have one more question before we get to the edge of our time together today, but I do have a couple points and a couple statements. If you're a doctor out there, don't you ever think about not giving that person in front of you hope. Like, that's the biggest drug you will ever give somebody, is lack of hope. That will take their life from them. If you want to keep people alive and thriving, give them hope. That's the number one thing you should be prescribing to anybody that comes through your office. Like, it's not a prescription pad. It's a mindset and a belief system. Give it to them. Give it to them for free. Give them hope. And here's to the practitioners. dogma. Kill the fucking dogma of your practice model. It's not rocket surgery or brain science. What you've been taught might not work. And you have to start reinvestigating what other solutions might be out there for people. And if the person that you have sworn your oath to do no harm to, consider that. What can you do to make somebody else's life better with your license to heal? And then my last question for you. Drugs, the pills, the potions, the lotions. When people get them and they go on this lifestyle of management, if you will, when do people stop taking that shit?
Oh boy.
That's a good question to end on. So, you guys hopefully talked to me enough by now. Like, I'm super nuanced about this type of stuff.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you.
That question is going to be dependent on the person, like no doubt
Yeah,
about
of course.
it. Because as I told you, there are people out there who are going to do absolutely everything possible in their lives to get better, and they still keep getting a little bit worse. Sure, it slows down. Sure, things get more stable, etc. But they're going back 20 plus years, I used to have a very different perspective on all of this before I learned more about everything that I know now. And used to have a very like line in the sand approach to medications with cardiovascular disease. But in reality, they are a tool. And if used properly and sparingly and in the right circumstances versus like as the blanket first line therapy for everybody who just qualifies because of a number on the lab test, if they're used more thoughtfully and more specifically with certain people, then they are a tool that can be incredibly helpful to them and might need to be a part of what they're doing for the foreseeable future. However, if the people don't also do the other things that are more in line with helping them thrive, the drug's not going to do enough in those people either.
Amen.
Oh, and I would say that if they're not going to do the other parts of it, I mean, taking a pill is easy, right? I mean, it just is. And that's the beauty of medicine. It's easy and mostly it's cheap. I mean, hell, Jim and I are connected with a group of people that can get you free medications, by just being a part of their club. I mean, it's amazing. So I like the simplicity sometimes and the cost of it. But the reality is, I think that we've empowered the idea of the pill such that we don't need to change our lifestyle. Where I see drugs coming in the strongest, or at least the drug philosophy the strongest, is when the doctors have a plan, hopefully, to get their patients off the drugs if possible. So I always have my clients, when they're working with their general practitioners, PCPs, specialistologists, whatever they happen to be, if they're prescribed something, I'm like, just ask them what the plan is to get off of it. And if they don't have a plan, I mean, I could get like, hey, a lot of people don't get off of this, but the people that we do see getting off of it, this is some commonalities, blah, blah, blah. I can understand that and giving them some reality. But the reality is, as we all know, have you guys ever been prescribed something other than like an antibiotic or a round of prednisone for X number of days that you're ever told you're going to get off of? Like, just think about it. Doctors don't, there's no end date. There's no end date.
It becomes lifestyle medicine.
It becomes like you said, it's a lifestyle of management with drugs. And then, as we all know, and we're out of time, and I understand, gentlemen, we'll have to get back together. Those drugs over the course of time, I'll just pick on statin drugs as an idea, since we're talking about cardiology. Then we'll come back on sometime and talk about statins. Time and a place for everything, but long-term use, they're going to rob your body of CoQ10. Ubiquinone is stored in muscular tissue. That's why that drug comes with a black label warning that says, hey, if you get pain and weakness in your muscles, you better contact your doctor or pharmacist right away, because it could be rhabdomyolysis and life-threatening, because while your skeletal muscle is breaking down and hurting, your cardiac muscle is breaking down as well to provide that CoQ10. So that drug itself comes with problems. When I lectured last time at the medical school, I've never been asked to get back to talk about this. I was lecturing about this exact thing: statin drugs and the HMG-CoA reductase pathway with CoQ10. And the students and the residents raised their hands and they said, hey, Dr. Bradley, why don't they teach us this in pharmacology? And I said, I don't know. That's a great question for pharmacology. And when I was done lecturing, a guy came up and I was clearing my stuff off the podium. I was a guest speaker. He starts slamming his stuff and huffing and gruffing. Clearly he's upset. And I'm like, hey, brother, I'm sorry I ran a little over. And he's like, that's not what I'm upset about. And I'm like, what's up? And he's like, I'm pharmacology, thanks. And I'm like, oh, great. That's great. So, I mean, I think the thing is, I come back to what your doctor isn't being taught, what your doctor doesn't know, what they're not learning in pharmacology, toxicology, physiology, basic biochemistry, honestly, could be the most dangerous part of the equation. And what I appreciate about Dr. Chong is that he knows all of that stuff and he takes all of that stuff into account, genetics and all, and is saying what's best for I call it the N factor of one. What's best for my patient in front of me. Like, it's such precision medicine. And we heard Dr. Chong say it over and over again. It really depends on the patient, right? There is no box. It's an N factor of one. You are unique. James, go ahead.
I have 5 other questions, but I'm not going to do them.
I know.
Dr.
Chong
is going on for hours. I feel like we're just getting started.
I know. I do too. I feel like we're just taking off.
Yeah.
But in closing, I have a nice outro that I'll say too. But in closing, let's leave the listeners with a message of hope. And is there anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like to share with our audience in closing?
No, I mean, I really feel like the main thing I would want people to come away thinking is what I already alluded to, which is your bodies are amazing and they are capable of more than you could ever imagine. And really the crucial thing is finding the best ways to facilitate that and get out of your body what it's capable of. And that may be different from person to person. And that's probably the biggest reason to seek out help as needed from somebody who might know how to help you in that way, to figure out what do you need that you're not getting. I always tell people there's 2 questions we want to answer. Number 1, what do you need that you're not getting? Number 2, what are you getting that you don't need? Wow. And if you're super thorough with those 2 questions, sky's the limit. So you need to be having that mindset to really get to where you're trying to get to. But the point is you can get there. So that's kind of how I would say it.
Well, thank you for the message of hope. I just want to thank executive producer Rachel Bradley for being behind the scenes, making sure that we're going the right direction with the path of the show. And Jason Bradley, what an honor to be able to host this show with you. I know we're opening up a lot of eyes, ears, minds, and hearts with what we're doing here. And Dr. Chong, it's been an absolute incredible experience having you on with us today. I know you didn't know what you're getting yourself into, taking this opportunity to talk to us about your life.
I don't have any bruises or anything. I feel all right.
But you've given our listeners real actionable strategies to take control of their cardiovascular health and take a break from the reactive medical system, which I think is really important. And it's really important to give people hope. Like I said at the closing, is the number one thing the doctor should be prescribing to people is a great mindset for hope. And if you have breath in your lungs and a heartbeat going, there's a chance for you. And thank you for sharing your expertise and the important work that you're doing to help people prevent heart attacks and strokes before they happen. For everyone listening, if this conversation opened up your eyes to a new way of thinking about your health, Dr. Chong's website is vital-human.com. You can connect with him on Instagram at _Daniel_Chong_ND and on Facebook at Vital Human Dr. Daniel Chong. And here's how you can help us grow our movement. If this episode gave you value, hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and drop a comment letting us know your biggest takeaway. Every like, share, and comment helps us reach more people who are ready to get better faster and break free from the medical matrix that's keeping them sick. This is exactly the kind of information the establishment doesn't want you to have. So help us spread the word. Share this episode, tell your friends, and let's build a community of people who refuse to accept that heart disease is inevitable. Heart disease is inevitable. Until next time, keep getting better faster. Dr. Chong, Dr. Jason, thank you for having an amazing show today with us.
Thank you, everybody. Love everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.